Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Shireen Hafiz, and I am the founder of the national outreach nonprofit organization, Deaf Kids Code. Our mission is to promote technology, computer science, and design thinking skills to kids who are deaf and hard of hearing. Our ultimate goal is to help cultivate, inspire, and create the next generation of leaders and innovators. And the power of technology is the vehicle in which we are looking to ignite interest into our students and everybody that supports them. So today we are hosting a Deaf Powerhouses in Tech panel that will showcase and highlight various deaf technologists. And our goal that we hope to come from that is to see role models who have successfully launched careers in the tech space. So thank you for being with us today. Our moderator is Emily Kubicek, and she will be taking over from this point forward. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you so much. Hi there, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Emily Kubicek. I will be facilitating the panel today. Today we have several deaf and hard of hearing individuals who have come in here to present about their work. Here they're talking about technology and coding. Here we have what we call a deaf powerhouse of technologists. That means people who are working and developing their skills to become better in the technology profession. And we're here to tell you that you can do it too. We have 4 panelists with us today. The first is Daniel. And I'm going to pass the baton to him. Take it away, Daniel.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Daniel Gonzalez. A lot of people call me Gonzo, short for Gonzalez. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about my story and how I got to where I am today. My roadmap starts at Lufkin High School in a small town in Lufkin, Texas. I was the one deaf kid in my grade. I'm actually hard of hearing, so I wear hearing aids. And it starts there because it was new for some of the teachers there, and you had to very much get the support that you needed. And but fortunately, I found a lot of that there. The teachers were there to help me learn how to practice my communication skills, my writing skills, and it's also there where I got a little bit of taste into technology through robotics, which I will talk about later. The rest of the roadmap kind of covers some of the different career opportunities that I have had along the way. I've had quite a few internships. So I worked at an internship company called WeightX, which was a fitness startup. Then I got to spend a month working for a company in Bangkok, which was a great challenge, especially in terms of the language barrier in between learning how to read lips over there, which was very interesting. And then I actually finished my undergrad in electrical engineering and computer science recently from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Now I am a software engineer at Microsoft. It's kind of crazy. I'm a software engineer working from home in the same room where I was a high schooler playing with robots. So this is the little background. It's not the cleanest background. But yeah, that's a little bit of my roadmap. So how did I learn the tech space? As I mentioned earlier, high school robotics was my first introduction to technology and engineering. But one of the things I want to talk about is a lot of the missing element of engineering that people don't think about is the communication and the people aspect. And this was my first introduction to those sorts of challenges. Then as far as when I started to learn to code, I actually didn't really know how to code when I went into school. A lot of people think you need to be a super software engineer before you're a freshman. That's not the case. The point of school is to learn. But while I was there, I did a lot of silly random projects, and that's a great way to learn. If you want to make a device to turn off the lights in your room because you're lazy, you learn some things along the way. If you want to make a app that makes accessing your calendar easier, definitely do it. That's how you figure it out. And then of course, I also engaged and interacted with a lot of people on Twitter. That's actually how I found out about this event. But by being on Twitter, you can kind of really follow a lot of what companies and people are sharing in terms of learning opportunities as well as professional opportunities. So I am an engineer. What is engineering? My definition may not be quite what you're expecting, but it is a field that takes people from different backgrounds and different areas of expertise to solve interesting problems. A common misconception is that engineering is just about the math and the science, but the people and the communication are in fact the most challenging part. At Microsoft, especially at a ginormous company with hundreds of thousands of employees, the thing I spend most of my day doing is not writing code, although I do a little bit of that, but it's engaging with my coworkers, getting on the same page in terms of what our project goals are, what can we accomplish, what do we want to accomplish. And oftentimes the very challenge of engineering is utilizing everyone's differences, utilizing everyone's different ways of interacting with the world to come up with a cool solution. And I find that I utilize that a lot as a person who is hard of hearing. There are certain challenges that I have that other people may not necessarily need to think about. So it's important to speak up about those things and to make sure those things are considered. But that's my little definition of engineering. I'm excited to hear what the others say. What do I do at Microsoft? More specifically, I'm on the build and infrastructure team. So the most important thing is we provide testing environments for engineers working on new features in Microsoft 365. We give them a space so that they can play around, mess up, and try new things, which is a pretty important thing to do, as well as also staying compliant and legal and all of that. Fortunately, I don't have to think about that stuff. The other thing I enjoy a lot in my day-to-day is working to improve the accessibility and usability of our internal websites. We have several applications that our customers use that were built in a quick hurry, and it had a lot of accessibility issues, not just for those who have issues with vision impairment, but also usability in terms of it was just hard to use. So because of I like to apply my unique perspective of approaching my own challenges in the world and trying to make those tools easier to use. And I have a lot of fun learning in the process. Lastly, I also work on to analyzing processes and legacy systems to find room for improvement to allow us to serve our customers better. If anyone tells you it can't be done, they're lying. Anything can be done to make it just a little bit better. That's the important thing to always keep in mind. And lastly, what we do is we work to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more, which is our company's mission statement and which one I am proud to work for and echo. Oh, you can see my cursor. Advice. We'll see how this goes. The first thing is you need to be your best advocate. You should know what you need to succeed. And if you're not getting that where you are, speak up and advocate for yourself. Fortunately, you'll find yourself in cases where there are people who will help you with that. But sometimes that may not always be the case, especially depending on where you are in the world. So don't be afraid to speak up or however you communicate and get the help you need. Ask for help. It is not a sign of weakness to ask for help. In fact, it's the strongest thing that you could do. At school, I had the opportunity to use CART, which is Communicative Assistive Real-Time Transcription. At first, I thought, I don't need that. I can hear just fine with my hearing aids. I'm too cool for that. Well, after my first semester, I got a lot of B's and C's, and it became pretty obvious I do need that. And so I went back to the Disability Access and Resources Office at MIT. I said, hey, you know what? This is something I need. I took advantage of that, and I did a lot better in my classes, and I realized a whole lot of what I was missing before. So ask for help. It is not a sign of weakness. Embrace failure. Sometimes the best way to learn something is to try something and to fail. So take those things, find out, okay, what did I learn here, and apply that going forward. So I took signals. I took 2 signals classes at school. I failed both of those miserably. I learned something very important. I am not good at signals, but trying to take those failures in stride, it's a good practice. I try to encourage myself to build. Help others. You can pay it forward and try to help wherever you can. If you see someone struggling with a challenge that you yourself has faced, reach out, say, hey, I see you. Like I have experienced this. Do you think I could help you with this? Ask questions. It doesn't make you look stupid or silly to not know something. Ask questions so that way you can get on the same page with everyone and so that you can have more impact. But most importantly, above all else, have fun. I think that's, you can find me on Twitter. I am on Twitter as Def Gonzo. I am also on LinkedIn. I don't use that as much, but reach me on there. And of course, you have my email, dangonzo@alum.mit.edu. I look forward to helping you however I can.
So my name is Brian Williams, and I am a backend engineer at GitLab. GitLab is a software company that makes software for developers to collaborate with each other. So if you've heard of Git before, Git is what is behind GitLab. So I grew up in Houston, and I am deaf and I wear hearing aids. And I grew up mainstream, and my ASL is very poor, which is why I'm voicing. But I grew up without ASL, and I went to mainstream schools. And so I went to high school. I struggled through most of primary school without any accommodations. I'll talk more about that later. But when I went to college, I went to University of Houston, and I finally started getting accommodations for all my classes. I had live captions in all of my classes, and it helped me so much. In college, I studied business, and I graduated with a degree in management information systems, which is like a combination of business and tech. After I graduated college, I went to work for a company called White Hat Security, and I was doing security work right out of college. I was doing vulnerability verification, where I would review security vulnerabilities in software and try to determine if they had an actual impact, like an actual security impact on those software systems. Within that company, I contributed to some of the internal tools, and I got noticed by the research and development team. And I was able to move to the research and development team and start doing coding full time. And so that was when I first started coding. I first learned to code actually in college, doing coursework there, but I did not start coding professionally until I got that research and development job. From there, I went to HEB, which is a grocery company in Texas. If you're in Texas, you probably know who they are. If you're outside of Texas, you might not. But they were a very big retailer, and I did application security there. So what I did was help software engineers write secure software. From there, I moved to GitLab. I decided that I wanted to code full time, and security was very bureaucratic. A lot of it was about trying to convince people to, put security measures in their software. And I didn't really enjoy doing that. So I decided that I wanted to code more. And I became a backend engineer at GitLab. And now I do coding full time. So I talked about this a little bit on the last slide, but I first started learning code in college. I learned Java and JavaScript in college. There was only a few coding courses, and it was business, so it did not go super in-depth on the computer science topics. Another thing is, when I started working professionally, I found that a lot of the college coursework was not very applicable to real-world engineering. The real-world jobs in technology moves a lot faster than college course curriculum does. So by working for a tech company and getting hands-on experience, that was how I managed to become a coding professional. Also, engineering is not just coding. The most challenging thing for me isn't the technical problems. It's collaborating with people and ensuring that it's an enjoyable experience for everyone that you collaborate with. That's something I struggled a lot with in my career, is paying attention to how what you say affects people. So at GitLab, I'm a backend engineer, and a backend engineer is someone who works on specific parts of an application that usually aren't visible to the end user. So for GitLab, I work on the stuff that happens in the background. So like the databases and the APIs that are used by the front end, which is the stuff that you actually see in your browser that you click on. So a lot of my job is working really closely with front-end engineers who work on that to make sure that our two different parts work cohesively together. A really cool thing about working at GitLab is that everything is open source. Transparency is one of GitLab's core values, and they take it to extreme levels. Everything is public by default. The source code is public by default, all the company policies, most of the communication too. And their mission is everyone can contribute. So everyone is welcome to come and submit code to GitLab. If you wanted to, you could go tomorrow and try and start coding on GitLab. And for me, I find it very rewarding to see people take something that I built and do very cool things with it. So a bit more about what I do at GitLab. I am on the container security team, and I work on GitLab security products related to containers. If you don't know what a container is, a lot of applications today are packaged as an actual tiny computer, like a virtual machine. So a lot of developers, the way we used to have package applications is they would be in like a zip or something like that, and you would install them on your computer, and everybody's computer is different. And so the application might not work the same way on every computer. So what the tech industry decided to start doing was just package the whole application as a computer. And that way it works on everybody's machine. So I read software that monitors containers, and it checks for intrusions or someone trying to attack those computers, kind of like your security alarm at home. If someone starts trying to kick your door down, your security alarm is going to go off. And real quick about the top tools. GitLab is written in Ruby. And if you want to work for GitLab, I would strongly recommend learning Ruby. It's very important to them in their hiring process. So advice. My number one thing, if there was only one piece of advice that I could give, it would be this, is ask for accommodation. Okay, even if you don't think you need them. For me, I struggled through school for a long time without any accommodations. And one of the reasons that I didn't ask for them was because of ego. I was like, I don't need this. And, I'm embarrassed because, oh, my peers, my friends are going to make fun of me because I have this interpreter or whatever. Don't worry about that. Just, you will never regret asking for accommodation. So do it even if you don't think you need it. And in school, in job interviews, in your actual work. When I first started interviewing at GitLab, when the recruiter reached out to me, in the very first email that I sent to the recruiter, I said, I'm deaf, and for the interview, I will require captions. And they set me up with that, and they were very accommodating. So make sure you ask. And if they're not willing to be accommodating, you probably don't want to work there anyway. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. The next thing is follow your dreams. Do what it is that you want to do. I changed career paths completely, and not everybody's career path is linear. I was a lead, and then I took a lower level position so that I could do more of what I wanted to do. And I don't regret doing that at all. Another thing is speak up. I noticed a lot of coworkers who I've worked with seem afraid to express their opinions. And your coworkers want to hear your opinion. So don't be afraid of expressing yourself. Next one is contribute. I mentioned that I was able to get my first coding job because I contributed. So a really good way to get noticed is, actually making a contribution to the people you want to work with. And that's how I got my job at GitLab too. I contributed, and it helped me get noticed by the team I'm working for now. Take your time. It's kind of the same thing as follow your dreams, but don't worry about how long it takes you to get where you want to go. Everybody moves on their own timeline. And, if it takes you until you're 30 to get your dream job, it doesn't matter, 30, 40, 50, whatever. Take as long as you need. And then I would say adapt. Keep an open mind and always be willing to learn new things. So here's my contact info. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, and you have my email too. If you want to reach out to me, feel free. I encourage it. If you DM me on LinkedIn, well, if you send me a request on LinkedIn, make sure that you mention that you saw me here, because most of the time I don't accept requests from people that I don't know. But if you say that you saw me on this panel, I will accept your request. Also, I have my GitLab profile here. And like I said before, all of my work is public. So if you want to see what I do for my job, you can go look at my GitLab profile and you can see all the code I write, all the interactions that I have with my coworkers. It's all there. So I think that's very cool. If you want to know what a day in my life is like, you can go see it.
Cool. Hey, everybody. My name is Alex Silver, and I want to take you through a little bit of my journey as we talk about being in tech. So if you start on the left here, I kind of skipped a little bit of the high school, but I did grow up in Southern California. Went to high school, and when I was in high school, I spent a lot of time playing and tinkering with tech. I'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. But when I went to college was really when I started like exploring a lot deeper. And when I was in college, I had some software engineer internships, and I did a lot of freelance work, which I felt like was a really cool thing to get me going in the field. Freelance work is basically me finding odd jobs, but in the real world of tech. So I was able to build websites for people who needed them and write little small apps and make a lot of mistakes, but do it with people who were willing to give a chance to me. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from UC Irvine. After college, I wanted to figure out what I would do in software because that seemed like the right place for me, and I was really excited to do that. I found a startup that was willing to give me a chance, and that startup was called Smart Edge. And I worked there for about 3 years. Our team grew a lot while I was there. We were 5 people when I started, and we grew to around 30 people. And then the company got acquired or bought by a company called Intel. And Intel is a very big company that makes processors and other technology that you probably have either on your computer or on a computer you've used before. And so I worked there for a couple of years. And most recently, I actually have just started a new role almost a month ago, actually, at Cash App, which is owned by Square. And so I'll talk to you all about that a little bit here. But yeah, so that's a little bit about my journey through the road of software. As some other people have said here before, it wasn't as pretty and linear as it shows here. So I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. So the first thing is learning the tech space. When I was young, my curiosity is what led me to technology. I would say that start by tinkering, like things that, you know, pick your interest. For example, edit source code, like on a website. If you ever go into your web browser, just right click and you can see the code that actually makes the page that's showing up on your browser. And just play with things and ask yourself some questions about what you're actually doing. And you'll start to learn the patterns. I also encourage you to find groups online. When I was in middle school and a little bit in high school. I had a phone called the Sidekick before iPhones were a huge, very popular phone. The Sidekick was a phone with a full keyboard, which was very rare at the time to have like a really comfortable full keyboard. And it was also one of the first phones where people could develop applications to run like the App Store that you have today on your iPhone. And I was always curious about that phone or those apps. And I reached out to people who were making them through email at the time and Twitter when it was early and said, how can I help? And one of the ways I could help was being a beta tester, just help them test their new software. And so that's a very common thing. A fun fact about that Sidekick, it actually was very popular amongst the deaf and hard of hearing community because of a lot of the full keyboard, for example, and some other tools that it had. I also recommend doing things like YouTube tutorials. There's a website called Stack Overflow, which will come up definitely when you Google questions that you have. And just follow people on Twitter. We were talking about Twitter earlier. It's a great place to learn and find people and ask questions. You can find the person who wrote software that you use just on Twitter and ask them a question, and they often answer. For me, university education was super good. It's not for everybody, but it, for me, gave me a good formal learning structure, which helped. And the last thing I'll mention is open source projects, which was being mentioned just before me. And that kind of takes a little bit of comfort to go into that area. But I think if you know of a software project and you type that project and then open source on Google, you might find that you can actually find the code and maybe even contribute to the code. So those are some ways that I've found that you can learn and explore the tech space, and I think are kind of similar, but also some new ones from what other people were mentioning earlier. So I'm a full stack engineer. These are different words in software that mean a lot of the same things, but full stack engineering, basically, I like to summarize it as working on both the parts of software that are visible and the parts that are invisible. So full stack engineering in fintech. First, fintech is short for financial technology. Basically, it's apps for finance. So the tech stack tends to be very forward-leaning. Consumer apps, like apps that you and I use every day on our phones, can move a bit more quickly in terms of what technology they use than business apps, which may have to support long-term customers and stuff like that. So in this space, there's a lot of opportunities. They range from small startups to very large public companies, and they're all working on different parts of the financial spectrum. You can even think of stuff like cryptocurrency, which is a very new bleeding edge technology, or anything traditional like banking. These are all different opportunities and ways to get involved in fintech. So full stack engineering at Cash App is pretty cool. So Cash App is a part of Square. Square is that company, if you've ever seen a food merchant or a retail store with a little square on top of a phone, or a register that has the Square logo on it. It's a credit card processing terminal, but there's so much that the company does, and the product that I focus on is Cash App. Square as a whole is focused on financial empowerment, making financial systems really accessible. And I work on the investing parts of Cash App. And as a full stack engineer, you have kind of this ability to impact both the speed and the experience of the app. So if somebody uses the parts that I work on and is buying a stock, for example, I can both make sure that that is very highly successful, right? You're not going to have a lot of failures occur, but I can also make that experience really natural and easy. So those are the types of things that you can do. So going on to the advice, most of this advice is centered around being deaf or hard of hearing in the working environment, but the last one is more of a personal one. So the first is let your peers know. A lot of people have said this so far. You're going to see more empathy from your peers if they're aware that you're either deaf or hard of hearing. And it took me a while to get comfortable with that. I remember when I started working, I sat back to back with another coworker. And with my hearing loss, that was the worst situation because I would always get asked questions and have to ask for repetition. And so when I told them about it, it led to a much more comfortable working environment. We changed the orientation of the office. It just worked. That takes me to the next one, which is to ask for repetition. You're likely not the only one who didn't hear an important point being made. And I think that it's also a good skill to ask for clarification anyway. So repetition and clarification, I think, are really valuable things to bring into the working environment. I also encourage you to encourage alternate forms of communication. We're really lucky these days that a lot of our work doesn't have to take place on a phone call. And you can do things like use chat applications at work. You can do things like at my work, a lot of us write documents at the same time using something like Google Docs so that we can all see what we're all typing, and it allows you to use your written communication really effectively. Another is to advocate. If you're comfortable with it, and it takes time for some, it took time for me, you can be a champion for accessibility on your team and on your product as an advocate. And I think that is something I would encourage you to do, because when you're more comfortable at work, you're going to produce your best work. Another is to start a group or a club. My company has an invisible disabilities group. And I think that's really cool because what it allows you to do is share your experiences with other people at the company that you're working with, who you may not have even realized are in the same boat as you. And the last piece of advice I have is to start small and iterate. This is the one that I was saying is not quite as related to being deaf or hard of hearing, but is just being a good person delivering good work. A lot of us want to build something huge and big. And I think it's important for you to realize that the road ahead is very long and it has a lot of opportunity. And so instead of building the biggest thing ever, which might overwhelm you, start small. And that has helped me really break through and feel more confident, because if you build small things that work, you'll get confident, and then you can keep building and building upon that. So that is all my advice. And here's a little bit about how to reach out to me if you'd like. I love using Twitter. So you can reach me at my handle there. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn or reach out through email. Any of these ways are perfectly okay ways to reach out to me. Thank you so much.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Bobby Cox. I was born in Utah, but I'm not Mormon. I'll let you know that. After that, I moved to California, and then I moved to Washington State. So I'm a West Coast guy, born and raised. And since I was young, I've always been fascinated with technology, computer, games. I remember when the Nintendo was first released, I was so excited. And, you know, I remember technology before the internet, before cell phones, before all of that. I was fully engrossed. And so I've really been a witness through all of that technological development. So through elementary school, middle school, there wasn't a lot of technology offered. there were computer classes here and there, and I was, I would go out and play with the computers there. And I remember those old Apple with the green screen and the pull-out keyboard, and I played Oregon Trail or different computer games like that. So that was my first experience using computers. And then I decided I wanted to go to college and major in computer science. And so that's how I ended up on my meandering path. First, I started out as RIT, Rochester Technical Institute, and I was in the computer science department. But I realized it wasn't really computer science. It was professional and technical communication. So I changed my major. And I didn't stay in technology. As I sat in the different classes, that I really was bored by the instruction, and I was really disconnected from the major and computer science. So I decided to transfer and change majors to professional and technological communication. And I realized early on, as the other panelists were talking about, the importance of communication. Because you're working with humans and communication is vital. Without any communication, nothing will happen. So after that, when I graduated school, I started getting co-op experience at Bausch and Lomb. And that was the old school company in Rochester, New York, where they made equipment and products for contacts, the different contact solution, eye drops, medical equipment for ophthalmologists to test their eyes, different things along those lines. So I worked there, and that was my first experience working with an hearing environment. So it was quite a culture shock. I didn't use any interpreters. It was just me. I was on my own. So it really was like rolling with the punches going through that. And I know a lot of the other panelists mentioned going through the same type of barriers with communication. And then I moved to DC, and I started working at Gallaudet University. And that was a great experience, a fully deaf environment, and it was almost overwhelming. And so I go home every day and just be overflowing with just ASL and deaf culture. It was a really great experience for me. And then after that, I decided that I wanted to start up my own company. So I tried with that, dipped my toes in that. And I tried out with Lingua B and Brilliance Ego. And now I'm not involved with them anymore. And so I decided that I wanted to try something, different. And that was quite different challenges along the way. So after that, I decided to settle down a little bit and work as a software engineer at University of California, Berkeley. And UC Berkeley has many different, there's UCLA, UC Berkeley where I worked, UC San Diego,
UC Merced.
I think there's 7 different campuses, all within the UC world. And so that's over 300,000 students and over 200 million alumni. So that's a huge campus system. So then I worked as an ASL DJ doing electric music, and that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. And I can hear just enough to catch the music. Also worked within the visual arts, doing things with LED lighting and different arts along that. And I was part of a organization called ASL Love. You can see that. It's the heart emoji. And so I went through, and that was kind of my meandering journey to where I ended up now. So how did I learn about and get started in tech and computers? As I mentioned before, I was big into computer games. I really enjoyed them. My dad was an early adopter to the computers. They didn't do much, but I was completely enthralled in those, and I wanted to play games on them. When I was 8 or 9, and my dad wasn't sure how to really get involved. And so We never figured it out. And so we would type, so we learned how to do the prompt commands, but we weren't really sure how to function under those new, use those new systems. So in middle school, I figured out how to do computer games and play along with computers. And then in high school, HTML really took off. I think it was HTML2 or 3 or something along those lines. And I was so excited. I was learning so much about HTML, learning the shell count and how to connect to other computers and coding within the computers. And that was, again, that was the old school way that computers communicated, but I really enjoyed it. So I decided that I definitely wanted to become a software developer, and of course went to RIT and learned how to program there. And I learned a lot of important concepts related to computer science there. But I always felt like something was missing. So then after school, I got a job and I decided that I would learn more on my own. And that's how I really learned about computer engineering and really how to build out systems and real projects that truly impact people. And so school, you know, I learned a little bit, but once I got the real world experience, it was huge, really impacted me. And that was how I learned how to work with real data, real systems, real people. And so that was huge. And so then, of course, I had side projects where I learned a lot of information. For example, working with lighting, the LED lights and LED strips and how to program those. And that was a project that I learned at home, connecting them to my laptop or something along those lines and figure out how to program lights. And I really enjoyed that. And making the lights different patterns or different designs. And also talking about cryptocurrency. I did set up, you know, a Bitcoin account, one of the really big, powerful systems, and that was really awesome. And then I dropped a Bitcoin and, you know, I felt like it wasn't worth it, but I did have a fun adventure trying out how to use things and stuff along those lines. So I really just followed my curiosity along the way. So what is being a software engineer? So it really is building and thinking about all the different perspectives and different avenues. You don't want to focus on just one person's needs and one person's point of view. You have to look at a variety of different needs. And it's also a lot of failure involved in there. It's a lot of trial and error. And that's the life of a software engineer. You really have to prepare for the failure. You know, if you build a bridge, it can't fail, right? Or the cars will fall into the water, the bridge will collapse, or people will die. And so when software engineers, we expect failure. And we look for other systems and we look at their failures as well. And we can plan using those. And the way we plan for success is by planning for failure. So that's something I really enjoy about software engineering. So at UC Berkeley, as I mentioned, there's many students, many faculty, many staff. It's a huge system, a huge campus system, and it's right in the middle of California. And I live in San Francisco. And we have a unique team on campus where we're building different types of integrations. So that means that if you have a system that you want, two different systems that you want to connect and communicate and work within each other, and how to connect all these different systems and integrate them on campus. So one example, HR, human resources, whatever their needs are, and how they can communicate that data with IT, and that sharing of information. Maybe they fill out a form with your name, your information, to have the drop-down menu, and it automatically is transferred to the different systems and pulls from different databases on campus and populates the information. So that's been a really fun job. And of course, the main thing I use is JavaScript. That's the main language. I use a little bit of Python as well, but JavaScript is the most popular system in this day and age that folks use. All right, so advice. As a deaf person, you know, interpreters and other people mention accessibility, communication. That's really, really important. So just know your needs, know what you need. So that means that you have to learn yourself and become comfortable with yourself and know that it's okay to be deaf and that there's no excuses like, oh, I'm deaf, I can't do this. Be proud of your deafness and who you are, because it brings a unique perspective to the world, to the team, to the work. And so with that, I've worked with interpreters all my life. And so use interpreters, work with them. Become an interpreter expert. And if you don't need interpreters, that's fine. But if you do need interpreters, use them. Other advice, if you don't need, if you don't need interpreters, you can talk to people one-on-one, and you can transition between both using ASL. If you need an interpreter, use it. And if you don't need an interpreter, then don't use them. But you're in control of that communication and your communication needs. And so hearing and deaf, it doesn't matter. It's ASL. I use ASL, and it is a wonderful visual language. In the same with systems and how systems communicate, it's great being apply that same knowledge that ASL gave me to the systems, and it really makes the world a better place. And follow your curiosity. There's many situations in which I've had a huge impact on me. For example, I was curious about Bitcoins, so I followed Bitcoins. Whatever you're curious about, anywhere, don't let anything or anyone stop you from chasing your dreams. And also, it means you may make mistakes along the way, but that's okay. Many people make many mistakes. And that's okay. You can move on from them. They don't have to define you. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Just push that aside and stay the course. And please feel free to contact me anytime. You can contact me on Twitter, same as other folks. All of us are on Twitter in this presentation. You can also contact me on my work email anytime. It's right here. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today.